For the first section of the test, we have to factor each expression completely. So I have g squared minus 5g minus 14. The first thing I need to look for is to make sure that each of these three terms do not have anything in common. And they do not. They don't have any factors in common, and I cannot factor out a g from all three of them because the 14 is just a constant. So I'm going to go ahead and write my parentheses, and I'm going to look at this first term, which is g squared, and I'm going to split that up into g times g. That gives me g squared. Then I'm going to look at the last term, the 14, and I'm going to write down the factors of 14, which would be 1 and 14 and 2 times 7. There aren't any other factors of 14. So now I'm going to look at these factor pairs and see which ones I can manipulate to add up to this negative 5. And I see that 2 and 7 can add up to a negative 5 if I place my signs correctly. So negative 5 is what I'm shooting for. So between 2 and 7, the 7 has to have the negative sign. The biggest one has to have the negative sign. And then this is going to be the 2 over here. It's going to be a positive 2 because negative 7 times positive 2 is the positive 14. So then I'm just going to go and double check. G times g is g squared. We already know negative 7 times positive 2 is negative 14. And I'm going to check that middle term. So negative 7 times g is negative 7g. And g times positive 2 is positive 2g. And when I combine those, I'm going to get my negative 5g, which is what I was looking for. So that means that I did factor this completely and correctly. Here's my answer right here. G minus 7 times g plus 2. Number 2, we need to factor x squared plus 6x plus 9. The first thing I need to look for is to see if they have anything in common. So they have no factors in common, they have no variables in common. So I'm going to go straight to factoring the binomial. So x squared is going to be x times x, and then I need factors of 9 that we could use to add up to 6. So that one is pretty straight up. We could do 3 times 3 is 9. They need to be positive 9, and I have a positive 6, so I know both factors can be positive. Then I'm going to go back and just double check that I really do get that middle term of positive 6x. So 3 times x is 3x, and then x times 3 is also 3x. And when I add those up, I get 6x. So these are the correct factors, x plus 3 times x plus 3. I can leave it like that, or I can write it as the product x plus 3 quantity squared. Either one is correct, and I accepted that on your test. Both of these mean the same thing. All right, number 3, 8n squared minus 14n plus 3. When I look at this, I always have to check for any common factors. They do not have anything in common, so I'm going to go ahead and split these up into my binomial factors. Now this one's a little bit different because I have a coefficient here of 8. So I'm going to have to think of not only factoring the 3 over here, factors of 3, but also those factors of 8. It's going to kind of mess with me a little bit. So factors of 8 are 8 and 1 and 4 and 2. I'll be honest, most of the time it's not going to be the 8 and 1. It's going to be the other factor. So I'm going to try 4 times 2. 4 times 2 is 8, and then that n squared is going to be n times n. Okay, I'm going to leave that there, and then I'm going to go look at the 3. The factors of 3 can only be 1 times 3. So I'm going to just try them in either space. I'm going to put a 3 and a 1 here, and I'm going to see if that works. Okay, I'm trying to get a negative 14 in the middle. So I'm going to multiply these together. That's going to give me 6n, and I'm going to multiply these together. That's going to give me a 4n. So even if I play with the signs, the positives and the negatives, the most I can ever get out of this is a 10n. So that's not going to work. So I just did that to let you guys see that sometimes it's like a puzzle. You just have to play with it. So what I'm going to try now is switching the 3 and the 1. So I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to put the 1 here and the 3 here. Now before I mess with the signs, I'm just going to double check that this is going to work out. So 1 times 2n is 2n, and 4n times 3 is 12n. So when I add those together, I do get my 14n. The only way I'm going to get negative 14n is if they are both negative. So I'm going to put that up there. And then I'm just going to double check. 4n times 2n is 8n squared, and negative 1 times negative 3 is positive 3. And I already know that those middle terms are going to work out. So my answer is 4n minus 1 times 2n minus 3. Number 4, 2a squared minus 4a plus 2. The first thing I need to do is to look at this and see if they have any factors in common. So I notice that they have a 2 in common, so I'm going to pull that out first, and then I'm going to write the factors that are left over. So 2 times a squared gives me 2a squared, minus 2 times 2a would give me the minus 4a, and then 2 times 1 would give me that plus 2. Okay, so now I've pulled out everything that they have in common, and I'm going to look at the inside of the parentheses. I still have that 2 on the outside, and I'm going to factor what's inside parentheses. So a squared is a times a, and the factors of 1 are easy. That's just 1 and 1, and now they have to, 1 times 1 has to be positive 1, but end up with a negative 2. So that tells me that both of these have to be negative, because when I multiply the inside, I'm going to get negative 1a. When I multiply the outer, I'm also going to get negative 1a, which gives me that negative 2a in the center. So I can leave it like this, or I can rewrite it, because I notice that a minus 1 times a minus 1, that's the same factor. So I can rewrite it like this as well. So 2 times a minus 1 squared. So either answer is correct. Number 5, 3k cubed plus 14k squared plus 8k. Okay, by now, hopefully you're remembering the first thing you need to do is look for anything that they have in common. When I look at this, I only see that I can pull out a factor of k. I can pull out a k from the 3k cubed, from the 14k squared, and the 8k. K is the only factor they have in common. So if I pull that out, I have to ask myself, what do I need to multiply k by to get 3k cubed? So I need to multiply it by 3k squared. Okay, there's your exponent rules there. Okay, when I multiply k times 3k squared, I get 3k cubed. So moving on to the middle term, k times what gives me 14k squared? Well, k times 14, and then I need another k to get the k squared. Then the last term, k times what gives me 8k? Well, k times 8. Okay, so now I have pulled out what they have in common. That's this guy out here. And I need to factor the trinomial. So leave my k out here. So I'm going to do 3 times 1, okay, or just k. So 3k times k gives me 3k squared. Now 8 has a few factors, so I can do 1 times 8, or I can do 2 times 4. Okay, now I'm just going to have to play with them and see which one will give me this 14 in the middle. So first I'm going to try 1 times 8. So I need to check those middle terms. This is 1k and this is 24k. So 1k and 24k, there's no way I'm going to get a 14 out of that. So no big deal. I'm going to erase this and I'm going to try to switch them. So now I'm going to put the 8 first and the 1 here. So now this is the middle term is 8k and the outside terms are 3k. 8k and 3k is 11k, not the 14. So I'm going to have to go back and erase that. This is kind of like a puzzle. Don't be afraid to be wrong. So 1 and 8, not going to work. So now I'm going to try 2 and 4. So in the middle I have 2k. My outside terms are 12k. So I know if I add those together I'm going to get the 14. Since both signs are positive, this can be positive and this can be positive. So now I have it. K times 3k plus 2 times k plus 4. That's my answer. Here we go, number 6. 20w squared minus 45w plus 10. Okay, what do they have in common? 20, 45, and 10 all have 5 in common. And since 10 does not have a w next to it, all I can pull out is the 5. So 5 times what gives me 20? 5 times 4. And then I need the w squared. So w squared minus 5 times 9 gives me 45. And I need a w. Plus 5 times 2 gives me 10. Okay, so I pulled out the 5. And now I need to factor this trinomial. Now 4w squared. Kind of have some options here. I'm going to try 2w times 2w. And then 2, the only factors of 2 are 2 times 1. Okay, now remember we have to play with those positions of those factors to see if we can get negative 9w. So when I do the inner, I get 4. When I do the outer, I get 2. Well, 4 and 2 is only 6. So that is not going to work. I'm going to go back then and kind of switch things up. If I take these out, I can use 4 times 1. So 4 times 1. So now in the middle, I'm going to have 2. And then 4 times 1 is 4. So 2 times 4, well that's, I'm sorry, this is going to be 2, let me write that down, 2w and 4w. Okay, 6w. That's not going to work either. So the only thing I haven't changed yet is the position of this one and this one. So I'm going to flip-flop those positions. I'm going to put a 1 here and a 2 here and see if I can get the middle terms that I need. So 1 times 1 is 1w. 4w times 2 is 8w. I can add those together and that gives me my negative 9. So now I have to think about the signs. So they have to combine to be negative 9. So if I put negative, if I put negative and negative, then that will give me negative 1 and negative 8 is negative 9. And negative 1 times negative 2 is positive 2. So my final answer, and I'm going to rewrite that, my final answer then is going to be 5 times 4w minus 1 times w minus 2. Number 7, our last and final factory. Okay, a squared minus 16. What do you guys notice? Hopefully you notice that there is no a term in there. There is nothing in the middle. So we have the first term and the last term only. So what that tells me is that that middle term got canceled out. I can still factor it. So I'm going to put my parentheses. I know a squared is going to be a times a. And 16, although it has several factors, I need them to be the same number so that that middle term will cancel out. Well, 16 is a perfect square, so 4 times 4 is 16. Now 4 times 4 has to be negative, so that means 1 is positive and 1 is negative. And check this out. When I do the middle, I get positive 4a, and when I do the outside, I get negative 4a, and that cancels out. So I have my two factors, a plus 4 times a minus 4. That's it. So now, hopefully you guys have worked through and done your corrections. We will post the extra practice. You need to complete the extra practice and come and check those problems and then bring your corrections along with your extra practice that you have checked before you can retest. If you guys have questions on this reteach or questions on the extra practice, then you need to come by for tutoring. Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, the Avid tutors are in 116. Monday, Wednesday, Friday lunch, they usually are in room 110. That would be Miss Castro's room. And then Miss Tanner or Miss Castro is usually available Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning, or both. So get here if you need to speak with somebody about any difficulty that you guys have had. All right, see you soon.